Okay, let's do that then. It will be an intimate conversation. Um, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are, and welcome to this side event at the Asia Pacific Climate Week. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. This side event, we will be talking about integrating sustainable energy and transport in island territories. This is our agenda for today. I will be providing a welcome and a brief introduction to the work that brought us all here ultimately. My name is Maria van Veldhuizen. I'm a senior associate at SD Strategies, and I'm speaking to you from Los Angeles, California, where it is still just about Tuesday evening. And then after my quick introduction, we will have three very exciting case studies by our three main speakers who we're so glad to have here today, and who will be sharing some examples of how transport and energy system integration works in practice. Feel free to ask questions using the chat function, and if you do, please specify to which speaker you would like to redirect to direct your question, and then we will get to those during the Q&A session. A quick introduction to the organizers of today's event. It's a truly global event. I think we've got many different continents and time zones represented. The main organizer is the Partnership on Sustainable Low Carbon Transport, or SLOCAT. We also have the Rainer Lemoine Institute, which is a research institution working towards 100% renewable energy. We have NREL, which is a US national laboratory that advances the engineering side of energy efficiency, renewable energy, and sustainable transport. Then we have LEDGE-GP, which accelerates the sharing of knowledge and solutions globally for climate resilient, low carbon development. And finally, SD Strategies, which is a policy and communications consultancy working on energy, the environment, and economic and social development. And as I mentioned before we go into our very exciting case studies, I will provide a brief introduction to the work that inspired this event, which was the development of a report for the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, on planning for the integration of sustainable energy and transport systems in small islands. And as you can see, this report was developed by many of the same organizations that are behind this event today. And it discusses why and how to plan for the transition to renewable energy and electric mobility on islands specifically, and also presents two methodologies to support this planning, which I will be elaborating on a little bit later on. And it contains three case studies, and I will post a link to the report in the chat when I get a minute. So what does integration of sustainable energy and transport mean? On islands, it basically means that you transition the energy system from one dependent on imported fossil fuels to one powered by locally generated, either centralized or distributed renewable energy, and then develop a transport system that is sustainable and ideally accessible, including public transport that is based on this locally generated renewable electricity. So why is this a good idea? Well, first of all, fossil fuel-based energy and transport systems on small islands tend to be very costly because these fuels must be imported at high prices, which often means that they require government subsidies to make energy even remotely affordable to the local population. They're also unsustainable because energy generation relies often on diesel fuel, and they can be unreliable because they're vulnerable to price fluctuations for fuel and the risk of supply disruption, for example, when port facilities are damaged by tropical storms. And at the same time, the costs for renewable energy and electric mobility are going down and have been for a while. And so there's this great opportunity to use these new affordable technologies to reduce emissions and local air pollution and enhance resilience to extreme weather events. And small islands are in a unique position to take on the role of trailblazers because due to their small systems, their limited energy demand, their small road networks, their small vehicle fleets, they do not require they require a relatively small amount of investment to make this shift. And because of their very high current energy prices, this investment can be earned back quite quickly. And so also due to their often very good potential for renewable energy generation, mainly solar and wind, they have an opportunity to blaze a trail for this transition and show the world how it can be done. Here are some more benefits of the integration of sustainable energy and transport systems that we investigated, some of which we've already discussed. The social ones are primarily related to the rollout of public transport systems, which are often lacking or very limited on APEC islands, and which can be linked to enhanced economic opportunities for vulnerable groups, among other things. Now about the how. As I mentioned, the report proposes two methodologies for the development of energy and transport integration plans. And the first of these is the Avoid, Shift, Improve framework, which helps authorities to develop strategies to decarbonize the transport sector. And the idea is that you don't start by replacing all private combustion engine vehicles one for one with private electric vehicles so that you basically just end up with slightly cleaner traffic congestion, but that you first, you start by reducing transport demand or avoiding unnecessary travel, then promote a shift to public and non-motorized transport, and finally improve the efficiency and the sustainability of the vehicle fleet by encouraging the adoption of electric vehicles, among other initiatives. And then multi-criteria analysis helps to define the optimal scenario for making this shift to energy and transport integration. And how it works is basically you start by setting a goal. We want an integrated system that's more sustainable than the current one and more affordable. And then you define evaluation criteria, which include, for example, resilience of the system, upfront investment required, the ultimate levelized cost of electricity after implementation, etc. And then you invite a broad range of relevant stakeholders to jointly weight these criteria and determine which are the most important based on the characteristics of the island, local priorities. And then based on these weightings, you score a number of scenarios and choose the most appropriate one. And these scenarios may, for example, differ in terms of how much renewable energy generation capacity you plan to install, of which type, what types of electric and non-motorized transport you promote, and how you do it. Is it subsidies? Is it other ways? And how extensive charging infrastructure for electric vehicles should be. Now on to the next steps. Where do we want to go from here? And we've been discussing this with all the partners. The next steps that we would very much like to undertake are to expand the methodology by including a financing component. So once you have the scenario, how do you get the money together to make this initial investment? And the design of regulatory policy and financing instruments to manage the transition and also manage the system effectively once it's in place. And then we would like to move on to implementation. We're already talking to potentially interested islands and remote communities. Of course, this is a great opportunity for islands, but also other communities that are not strictly speaking islands, but are remote in other ways and poorly connected to central grids and transport systems for other reasons. And then finally, we would like to provide, based on this experience, strategic advisory to larger entities such as cities, states, and national governments that are working on their own integration strategies for transport and energy. This was my introduction. It's now my great pleasure to hand over to Renee Fadila-Gutan, who is General Manager of ROMELCO, the electric cooperative of ROMBLON in the Philippines. Over to you. I shall stop sharing my screen so we can
thank you
see.
very much. Can you see now my screen?
Yes,
Hello?
we can see it.
Thank you, Maria, for the introduction. And to everyone, good afternoon, good day. First, I'd like to extend my gratitude to the organizer of this event for inviting me to speak in this very meaningful discussion in promoting awareness in the utilization of renewable energy sources to energize remote communities and to achieve the total electrification in our coverage area. And also, in our case, we are promoting electrification of the transportation to support the and story of our cooperatives adoption this renewable. Before I go further, I give tour provinces located. So, Romblon, if map of the Philippines, Romblon is practically along Marup region 4B, in barangays, with a total population as of 2015 of about 781.
Excuse me, your connection is not the best.
Romblomanons.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you lose it now? Oh, you just, sorry, Rene. Your connection is not the best. Maybe if you turn off your video, it might work better.
I'm back. Sorry, can you? I'll have to share it again, no? Okay.
Yes, but I'm not sure if maybe the connection is too weak. Maybe if you turn off your video and just share your screen, maybe this will guarantee that we understand and hear you better.
Can you see now my screen, Nicola?
Yes, now we can see.
Hello? Okay. So on the next slide, I'm going to introduce to you our organization, the Romblon Electric Cooperative. Okay. Our cooperative is a non-stock, non-profit. Okay. And we are one of the youngest the National Electrification Administration on June 14, 1989. Franchise area are the 7 municipalities of the province of Romblon. Mostly the small islands of the province. The town of Romblon, classification of it was classified by NEA, and we are AAA category, and our member consumer owners are 31,409. Persons are it's quite small. The purchase is around 27 million 647,140 kilowatts. So this is our the profile of our electric cooperative. Next, of our electric cooperatives in terms of renewable energy development.
Hello.
Sorry, it's disconnected again. I have to share again.
Come a little in and out. But I think maybe it's better if you turn off your video, like don't share your video, just show your screen.
Okay.
That would be much
I
better.
will. Okay.
Yeah, let's try this. Because the connection is a little bit poor.
Can you see again my screen?
Yes, and also we can hear you now very well.
Okay. So this is our ambition. By 2025, we want to achieve 90% of our operation source 90% of energy from renewable. Several types of technologies: solar, wind, hydro, and biomass. So in all of the islands, and where we are now, currently, by last year, we already achieved 32% RE in our operation, and 68% is still diesel power plant, uh, supplying our energy needs, for all the 5 islands in our coverage area. So what are the compelling reasons why we are venturing to these renewable energy sources? So first, we want to reduce the generation cost of electricity, and eventual graduation from universal charge for electricity subsidy. So as I found earlier, that most of our the energy coming from technology are very expensive. Today, the cost of generation in our franchise area kilowatt hour to as much as 34 pesos per kilowatt hour. That's how using diesel power plant. Second, we want to provide reliable electric service to our membership owners. So diesel power plants are very sometimes so dependable. That contributes to poor service in our islands. So next is the democratization of ownership for power generation facilities. Maybe this is not unique to the Philippines, that most of the power generation facilities are owned by the big businesses, big companies. In our case, we wanted that these power generation facilities will be owned by the consumer owners of our electric cooperatives. Also, we want to transition from conventional power source to renewable energy sources. So this is what we are doing now, and we are learning from the experience of other institutions or other utilities in transitioning from conventional power to renewable energy sources. We are also looking for the best technology that we wanted to implement in our franchise area. And lastly, we want to stay in business. Now in the Philippines, there are a lot of private investors that wanted to take over the operation of the electric cooperatives. So after we develop the market, now private owners are wanted to take over the operation of the electric cooperatives, and want to do profit in the operation. Okay, so that's are the compelling reasons. So in the next slides, I will going to show to you the renewable energy projects of Romelco. So firstly, we developed the 1,350 kilowatt Cantingas Minato power plant. So this is the first renewable energy source that we have developed, no? And we put into commercial operation this project in February 2010. So it's quite almost 10 years now, 10 years now that we've been operating this power plant. And this is majority owned by the electric cooperatives. We own this, and our cost here is very the cost of the production or energy is lower than the subsidized approved generation rate, or SAGR. Maybe the subsidized approved generation rate in the Philippines. This is the rate that is subsidized by the universal charge for missionary electrification. And our rate for this particular hydropower plant is much lower than the SAGR. The current SAGR is 5 pesos 64 centavos per kilowatt hour. So here, our cost is only 5 peso and 21 21.07 centavos per kilowatt hour. So it's far more cheaper than the subsidized approved generation rate. So this is the rate component. The capital recovery fee of 4 pesos and uh, 8.79 centavos per kilowatt hour, and the O&M is 1 peso and 22.8 centavos per kilowatt hour. So the CRF, or the capital recovery fee, this is the cost that, or the revenue that we are using to pay our amortization. And the our loan will become will mature, no, by 2023. So once that we can fully pay our loans by 2023, this CRF will be taken out, and the remaining cost, or energy cost that will be sold to our member consumers, or will be paid by our member consumers, will be only 1 peso and 22.8 centavos per kilowatt hour. Okay, so this is the rate component. So this is the beauty of uh, a project, or renewable project, owned by the electric cooperative. So you can reduce as much as the level of the O&M. Okay, so aside from this revenue coming from our approved tariff, we also receive 50% cash incentives coming from the Renewable Energy Act, no, of 2008 in the Philippines. We are being paid by our by PISAM, no, or the Power Sector Asset and Liabilities Management Corporation, monthly, at the rate of 1 peso and 17 centavos per kilowatt hour. Okay, so this is the a windfall additional income, no, that are being derived in the operation of renewable energy projects in the Philippines. So the total project cost is about 172 million, or cost per megawatt hour, or per megawatt, is around 127 million pesos. So these are the few technical information that I would like to share to you, no? So it is a very simple technology. It is a Francis turbine, run of the river, and these are the other information. Last year, we were able to generate around 7,869,750 kilowatt hours. Okay, so these are some pictures of the hydropower plant. This is the weir, 2.5 meter height. This is the the turbines inside the power plant. So this is the picture of the power plant, and the picture of the control panels. Okay, so on the next slide, I'll show to you the first solar diesel hybrid power plant, no, with energy storage, battery storage. This is the first in the Philippines to be in commercial operation. No? We commissioned this on March 3, 2016. No? And this is 100% owned by the electric cooperative, by the Romelco. No? This is quite small. It is only a 30 kilowatt capacity, serving a small island barangays, or island community in the province of ROMBLON, no? With around 258 households. Okay, so this is a small capacity, 30 kilowatt, and luckily we able to source grant funding from the Korea Energy Agency, provided 60% of the project cost, of the total project cost, and we also got funding from ADB, grant fund of 20% of the project cost, and the rest, the remaining, is a loan fund, no, coming from the National Electrification Administration. Okay, so the total project cost is around 25 pesos per kilowatt hour. 25 million, no, the total project cost. 25.852 million pesos, and the true cost of generation is quite high at this point, no, since we are still using now diesel, no, because the system is now in nearly overload condition, so we are expanding. Okay, so the pass-on rate for the consumers is 15 pesos per kilowatt hour. Okay, so these are some of the technical information that this project, no, featured, no. Okay, so we have a genset of 15 kilowatt, and a PV system of 30 kilowatt peak, and we were using a lithium-ion battery, no, for the capacity of 200 kilowatt hours. Okay, so we have a power control system of 20 kilowatt. This type of small solar power to get a service contract, no, or energy service contract. So we able to get some contracts since to operate this power plant as required by law, and you need to apply for one block, no, of RE contract that is to, and the footprint of this plant is just 300 square meters. As I've said earlier, it was commissioned on March 3, 2016. Another renewable project that we had is the first, again, no, in the grid area to install wind turbines. No? This is 900 kilowatt, composed of 300 kilowatt wind turbines. And this is also to be owned, no, by the electric cooperatives, by Romelco, after 4 years. We've been starting leasing the facilities starting at 2019. So after 2020, this will be turned over to us after the payment of the amount of the cost of the project. So our lease agreement is 4 years, no? That will end on 2023. So our bank, guaranteeing bank for this project is the Development Bank of the Philippines, and the Ministry of Environment of Japan and the Komai Haltech Incorporated, wind turbine manufacturer based in Japan, also provided the 50% of the total project cost. So the cooperative will only pay the 50% of the total project cost. So the true cost of generation of the tariff that we are applying with the energy is 11 pesos and 50 centavos per kilowatt hour after the subsidy from the government of Japan. So this is the rate component of the 11.5 pesos, no, per kilowatt hour. The biggest component is the capital recovery fee again, no. So it is 8 pesos and 58.12 centavos per kilowatt hour, and the rest are O&M and the fixed O&M and the variable O&M. Okay, so again, once that we can pay our loan, this capital recovery fee will be again taken from the rate components, and the remaining of the electricity will be the fixed O&M and the variable O&M, which is just around 2 pesos and 90 centavos per kilowatt hour. So it's really cheap. No? So we aim that this our target during the conceptualization of this project is to contribute 16% of energy purchase of our cooperative from other sources. So this is the technical information of the project. Annually, we are supposed to generate 2,100,000 kilowatt hours here. Okay, so we completed the project on December 2018, and the commissioning date is February 2019. And we also got secured a service contract, no, from the Department of Energy with this service contract number of 2018-06-122. Okay, so these are some pictures of the wind turbine. By the way, this will be hybridized to the diesel power plant that we also own, no? Okay, so as a regulator of the system. Okay, so another renewable project is the 22 kilowatt biomass power plant. No? This is the test bed of what we are thinking big biomass power plant in the island of ROMBLON. So this is a small size, energizing or providing electricity to 50 households in a very remote community in our franchise area, in a very small island in the municipality of ROMBLON, no? Particularly in the island of Alad. No? So our tariff here is 5 pesos and 64 centavos per kilowatt hour, and the total project cost, including the distribution lines, is 3,755,968 pesos and 40 centavos the total project cost. We able to get subsidy, from the Department of Energy to test this type of technology if it is applicable to the island settings. So our fuel, you may for this power plant is we are using hybrid grass and coconut fronds and coconut shell. So we are using several types of available and the fuel economy, we have tested this at 80% load factor, and it has a very promising performance. No? It only consumes 80 kilograms per kilowatt hour at 80% load factor. Okay, so it is a very promising technology, and we have already submitted to our bank, the development of 1 megawatt, biomass power plant to be installed in the island of ROMBLON, to supplement our other RE resources. Okay, so this is a very simple technology. And another thing that we have developed, another renewable sources that we develop is the distributed the 200 kilowatt grid tied, rooftop grid tied solar power plant. Grid. Again, the other test bed, for the solar power plant that we are trying to develop. We are developing 2 megawatts of solar rooftop power plants. In the Philippines, we in the small villages, all of the barangays, we call it barangays, we have this type of buildings in all of the coverage area of Romelco. So in each barangay, the basketball courts, the rooftop of their basketball court can be used as the platform, for our 2 megawatts the plant 2 megawatts solar rooftop power plant. Okay, so this project were commissioned, in February 25, 2020. So if not for the pandemic last year, we aim to complete the 2 megawatts rooftop solar rooftop grid tied power plant, in the franchise area of Romelco. However, we wasn't able to do that because of the the difficulty of securing permits and procuring materials. So maybe by the next year, by 2022, if the everything will go back to normal, we can proceed for the development of that particular program. Okay, so this is owned by 100% by our cooperative, and the project was financed by our Rural Electrification Financing Corporation. This financing corporation is owned by the electric cooperatives in the Philippines. So the total project cost, based on the 2019 costing, is around 12 million pesos. So our true cost of generation, based on our calculation that needs approval by the ERC, by the Energy Regulatory Commission, is 8 pesos and 92.95 centavos per kilowatt hour. So these are the some of the technical information that this distributed rooftop grid-tied solar power plants has. Okay. So next, I'd like
Sorry,
to.
Mr. Fajila Guten,
Yes.
we have to wrap up soon, so that we have some time after the speakers for Q&A.
Okay.
Would you be able to wrap up in the next few minutes?
Yes. I have only 2 slides left. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So now, and in 2019, we are now introducing the electric vehicles in our area. So this is the electrification of transportation that we are now doing in our place. So we have partnered with Honda Japan, and we're using these 100 units of electric motorcycle. And the technology that we are using here is that when your battery when you are out of battery, you didn't need to wait for a long time to charge your battery, but you have to go to the battery exchange station, no? And it will take you less than a minute to have a new battery, no? So this is how it works, no? So I'd like to show you some of this short video on how it works, no? So these are the dispensers of the battery. Okay. So the concept of this is that this dispenser, this charger, will only use renewable energy power, no, coming from our hybrid, from our wind turbine and the uh, the solar. So it will not charge when there is no power coming from those renewable energy sources. And the next project that we have is to energize to electrify the small fishing boat in our islands. So this we would like to convert these small palm boats using 16 horsepower gasoline engine, no, with electric motor and with battery. Okay, so how we develop this renewable project. So we hired technical expert to help us and in the planning, and we also applied for commercial loans and the financial institutions, and we network with donor institutions, and we also develop our technical skills, no, of our personnel. In this project, the hard part is the maintenance, the operation and maintenance. So we have to develop the skills of our people to maintain the project, and to continuous learning on the new developments in the industry. And that's all. Thank you very much, and good afternoon.
Thank you very much for that interesting presentation and for sharing all of these great examples of renewable energy generation and transport system integration. Our next speaker is Mr. Alfredo Coro, who is the Municipal Vice Mayor of the municipality of the Del Carmen Siargao Islands in the Philippines. Over to you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just have a very short, message with Mr. Rene already presenting from Romelco and Sharelco, our electric cooperative, being one of the members of the Electric Cooperatives Association of the Philippines. So again, to everybody, good afternoon. I am Alfredo Coro II. I am the Vice Mayor of the municipality of Del Carmen, a coastal community located in Siargao Islands in Eastern Philippines. First, I'd like to thank the organizers for allowing me the opportunity to share a story about change and of hope. Siargao was declared by Condé Nast as the #1 island in the world for 2019, and recently by Vogue among the top 10 islands to visit. Islands are often associated with the tourism industry, and with the potential for exponential growth, it is important to plan out sustainable energy and transport needs. In 2011, the result of the study on climate vulnerability identified Siargao Islands as one of the most vulnerable islands in the Philippines, a country already ranked 3rd most vulnerable to climate change. And Jerry, one of the fisher folks of Del Carmen, have already felt that there are stronger and more frequent typhoons. increased volume of rain, and longer drought periods, sea level rise, and coral bleaching, all causing impact to our way of life. While the COVID-19 pandemic impacted heavily the tourism industry, it allowed us to review our growth and developmental plans to reduce impact to people like Ate Roxanne, who joined the tourism services sector and almost lost her livelihood. Tourism drives power requirements, with 72% currently sourced from hydropower and mobility, with our fuel costing 28% more than the mainland of Surigao. Strategies for integrating sustainable energy and transport in our may vary depending on the poverty incidence of the community. As presented by Sir Rene, they have already showed some of the best practices of how islands can be competitive in terms of ensuring renewable energy as part of their livelihood, as part of daily routine. The question is, will we move towards renewable energy and pushing for carbon tax hurt more than 41% of our population? Is the use of e-mobility practical for people moving goods and livestock as part of their daily lives? Hopefully, in our coming together this morning to guide our islands, we will be able to learn more and move forward with our planning. Mabuhay, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that clear message. And I think we will move on to our last speaker, who is Zakia Sumaru, who is completing her PhD at the Rainer Lemoine Institute in Germany.
Right.
Are you there?
Hi, yeah. Thank you, Maria, for the introduction. My name is Zakia Sumaru. Yeah, I'm a doctoral candidate at the Rainer Lemoine Institute of the TU Berlin here. And well, first I'm going to share my screen. And yeah, I study the small island developing states, and I look at their decarbonization pathways of the mobility system. So today I'm going to be coming here from a more academic or theoretical perspective. And the small island developing states, much like all the other islands here, have long been recognized as being particularly at risk to climate change. And like all your islands, these nations are often described as being hotspots of the climate change or being canaries in the coal mine. However, what I find very fascinating with the SIDS, well, the small island developing states, is that they have been very vocal in calling attention to this very high vulnerability and played a leading role in advocating for climate change mitigation at the UNFCCC, and the Alliance of Small Island States have campaigned in the 2015 COP for including the 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is now at the heart of the Paris Agreement. So what are the small islands? Internationally, they're identified as a group of 38 UN member states and 20 non-UN member states that are located in the Caribbean, the Pacific, and the rest of them are in the Atlantic, Indian Ocean, Mediterranean, and South China Seas. And they are home to approximately 65 million people. These islands are far from homogeneous and with significant differences in territorial area, governance systems, economic development, and geographic characteristics. However, they do share numerous features that have led the UN to recognizing them as a special group, including narrow resource bases, dominance of economic sectors that are reliant on the natural environment, tourism, limited industrial activity, physical remoteness, and limited economies of scale. And you can see that the things that make the small island developing states, the SIDS, are the same for all islands worldwide. And therefore, that has become the main hypothesis of our research here. We link these global challenges to decarbonization And we believe that the SIDS and islands could lead the way as successful energy labs by providing solutions that can be replicated not only for renewable-based power generations, but also for sustainable transport in energy autarky areas, other coastal regions, other island states, and other cities, closed system cities of similar population size. And as we know, in the transport sector, severe delays in meeting climate change mitigation goals exist, and therefore positive examples for pathways towards zero emission transport systems are urgently needed. And here I have two pictures of Barbados, which is one of the world's top users of electric vehicles. And I'm going to go into that later. But first of all, I'm going to come back to what Maria said in her introductory presentation, how islands are in an ideal state to transition faster. And I'm going to go a bit deeper into the whole theory. So we know, so we have the transition scholarship here. And we know, first of all, transitioning away from our current energy system is of paramount importance. And what I've used then for looking at the transition pathways of small islands is looking at the importance of energy and use demand and driving energy transition, and looking at the fact that islands have a small scale of demand. And this fits into finding that countries with a smaller consumer base are able to switch and exit at a faster scale than others. So, for example, with energy demand and supply co-evolving and innovations are mutually enhancing each other, but they don't have the type of drastic changes as in energy supply that that emerge from the historical records. So for example, the transition from coal to oil was a very long affair spanning, I think, 50 years. Whereas when we look at islands, the scale and the complexities of the transition are much lower, and they don't have the lock-ins and path dependencies of conventional system. And among the factors explaining slow transition rates are scale or market size, implying that larger systems can be changed more slowly than smaller system, and technological interrelation needs. Okay, so recording. So for example, the smaller the consumption, the faster and the earlier the transition, because there are minor replacement costs and fewer machine factories and sectors are involved. So we modeled a minimum cost scenario for the energy transition of Barbados. And in order to meet the whole energy demand of Barbados, you would basically only need the following energy requirements. And we can take these findings and apply it to all islands. They have more or less a small geographical size. They have limited resources, meaning that less entrenched path dependencies and lock-ins are there, which slows down transition in other countries. And their isolated locations are now to their advantage because of their demarcated boundaries. Their infrastructure are isolated, displaying only modest network effects and providing an opportunity for location-specific change that is nonetheless systemic in nature. What we did here is a very rudimentary calculation, and we will try to put all of this open source modeling tool online soon at the Reiner Lemon Institute. And what we've seen is that the islands pay a very huge amount of their GDP. And let's keep in mind that the SIDS have very small economies on annual fuel imports yearly, whereas an infrastructure switch, let's say we switch all the gas stations on the islands to solar powered gas stations, that would only take up 2% of their GDP. And that is just the initial investment. And at some point it reaches break even. And we focus a lot on infrastructure because they will either lock in transportation in high carbon patterns for the next 50 years, because infrastructure have very long lives, or they will help foster low carbon pathways. And what we've also researched is looking at the electricity or energy mix on the islands, and this need for decarbonization, or the fact that they need to escape this carbon lock-in, and also look at what it means for their energy security and environmental sustainability, could help push the SIDS for more decarbonization, especially when you look at the fact that the SIDS have extremely high solar potential, but you can't really see that in their current energy mix. So now we come back to the deep dive into the public transport in Mauritius. So and this is much like what drove the EV transition in Barbados. Small islands are prime markets for electric mobility because of their limited road network. They have their high fuel costs, a very important tourist sector, which need to be driven around, and the need for direct grid storage solutions. The conversion of the public transport fleet will have major cost savings and dramatic regional environmental benefits. And what we've seen from current transport trends is that consumer behavior, irregular trip configurations, economic growth, etc., favor private modes of transportation. In Mauritius, this is one of the hardest to decarbonize sector. It is now responsible for 54% of final energy consumption. And we know from the literature and other case studies is that the shift towards sustainable mobility is unlikely to occur independently. And we need to focus more on policy making. And so going back from the theory, we've seen is that the fossil fuel derived system has created lock-ins in Mauritius or in other SIDS. The fact that they spend such a huge amount of their GDP on fossil fuel imports also mean that they then have less capital for investing in solar or more sustainable forms of transport or energy. And this is representative of the global trend where there's a very strong positive correlation in the level of development and the increase in the use of motorized transport, particularly private cars. So what we've seen in Mauritius over the last 10 years is that there has been a 120% increase in private vehicle ownership, whereas buses have only seen an 8% increase. There has, however, been the introduction of a metro light rail in 2020, which goes through the heavily dense settlement areas. Over 60% of the population uses bus once a week. I think it has to be said that on SIDS and perhaps also your islands, government-run transportation is not necessarily seen as a revenue stream. It is usually subsidized and used as a social benefit to promote economic development. In Mauritius, the bus fleet is unfortunately very old, fuel inefficient, polluting, uncomfortable, and sometimes also inaccessible for elderly and physically challenged commuters. And the fares are nationally determined and subsidized. And by continuing our research into looking at the sustainable public fleet transition, what we've seen is that it touches on many aspects, from global policy, the global climate policies, local development issues, because we want to provide better mobility and work opportunities, and of course, environmental benefits, as well as, and very important for the SIDS, we need to secure energy dependence and national security, as well as provide resilient infrastructure for the local population and tourists. So what we wanted to do, or what we set out to do, is we wanted to investigate impacts and implications of this technological changes of the public transport system and their potential substantial contributions to lowering greenhouse gas emissions. So therefore, we've used four scenarios. The first one uses the current fleet of 3,094 buses. With the grid charge scenario, we've replaced 1,490, so all buses older than 1980 with e-buses, and we've assumed an industry electricity tariff of 0.14 USD cents per kilowatt hours, and we've simulated optimal charging points of 390. We did the same thing for the off-grid solar scenario. This time we simulated an energy autarky system, which was slightly higher due to more investment of 0.18 USD cents per kilowatt hours. And with the integrated and electrified transport system, we've modeled an optimal route for maximum synergy with the new metro line, and we came down to 335 buses, as the current system is quite inefficient due to the doubling of routes. However, this has also led to higher accessibility and intervals. So this is more our win-win scenario. And we've compared all the scenario according to the number of buses, the investment of the buses, of the new e-buses, electricity, whether it is diesel or from the electricity grid, O&M, and charging infrastructure, so that in the end we could compare the investment costs, O&M, fuel consumption, etc. What we found is, surprisingly, both the solar base and the grid based scenario are not that, do not lead automatically to much lower costs. Well, I just saw that we can't see the fuel cost for the base scenario, which is a pity because it is also quite, it is very comparable to the investment cost of the grid base and the solar base scenario. However, with the grid base and the solar base scenario, we reached break even within 20 years, which the system then becomes a self-paying system. And of course, with the IETS, we have much lower total costs per kilometers traveled and investment costs. What I also want to say is that the grid in Mauritius is very carbon intensive. So this also doesn't automatically mean that the environmental sustainability is there. You can see like our total annual costs versus the GHG emissions. Like most islands, Mauritius only contributes minimally to global GHG emissions. However, it's not an excuse for not trying to mitigate any GHG emissions. And like I said, the IETS scenario leads to extremely low costs per kilometers. The base one is at 2.31 USD compared to the two grid-based and off-grid solar. And this is because of the very high level of investment costs. What we found, however, was that the public fleet system on islands really offers itself as a lower hanging fruit for decarbonization, because just having, having set routes and bus terminal locations allows for easier determination of optimal location for charging infrastructure. There's also predictability of daily use profiles, which allows for greater ease in controlling charging behavior and fitting charging profiles to resource availability for maximum renewable energy integration. And in the case of Mauritius, upgrading to an electric fleet equated upgrading to a smart fleet, so one with route and vehicle dispatch optimized by demand and supporting real-time collection and dissemination of information for better consumer and operator efficiencies. Limitations of our research so far is that there's a huge data gap in transport on SIDS, but this can be said for the global south in general, and a significant amount of data collection and digitalization is required. We've conceptualized a long-term vision over a time horizon of 20 years. However, what this really needs is building strong coordination across different ministries, agencies, and departments, something which is easier said than done in practice. And the current finance framework globally presents barriers to these finance flows, and radical changes are needed so that capital is more equitably distributed. So of course, there's a belief that with the dramatic decline in the cost of renewables and the abundance of natural resources such as the sun on islands, it will be much easier for these countries to decarbonize. However, that is not the case, given the difficulties that many of these countries have in accessing and securing capital on the same terms as the rest of the world. And of course, future investments have the potential to be more robust if there's coherence and integration of the energy security and climate change mitigation streams of policies, allowing smaller economies to make more efficient use of public funds. But like I said, this is easier said than done. And our takeaways is that inequities and access to transportation will become a major social justice issue over the next couple of years. Individual and electrified transportation remains accessible only for the privileged, while lower levels of accessibility and difficulties in commuting falls to low-income communities. Investment in radical transformation of the transport system from mass transit to electrification and shared vehicles are important and necessary disruptors of the system. And an upheaval of the public transit system on SIDS have the potential to curb these growing inequalities, and without mentioning positive well-being and environmental health. And in light of the upcoming COP talks, we urge leaders to recognize that restructuring transport planning technologies and investment is a monumental opportunities for connecting accessibility and environmental and economic justice and climate mitigation. So thank you very much. It was great being here and also hearing the stories from the previous speakers. And I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you very much for that very interesting presentation.
I should stop sharing. I don't know how.
I think you can click at the top of your screen that you're sharing.
Right. Oh, right.
Okay, great. We will now move on to question and answer. There have been a few questions and comments in the chat. Let me just share my screen again, so to remind you of who our speakers have been. If anyone has a question that they've put in the chat and that they would rather just say out loud, feel free to unmute yourselves. There are not that many of us here, so we could just turn it into a conversation.
Hello, Maria. This is Alfredo.
Hi.
Yeah, sorry. I hope you don't mind. I'm not turning on a video. I might be cut off. Internet's
No, that's no problem.
Pretty good in in the island. Just some comments on both presentations, especially with the update from Zakia about power and transport becoming as a social justice issue later on. In terms of island, there are two main in an island setting. There are two main considerations from a governance perspective. One is the cost of power. What will power? How much of the family income will be spent on power versus health, education, and other social determinants of quality of life. The second is the stability of power, the frequency of brownouts. So if you do, let's say, full renewable energy, what is the assurance that you have stability of power? Because stability of power will ensure you of the investments that are coming in, especially again, islands are often associated with tourism. So how do you ensure that there is the comfort that you promote to offer? There is stable air conditioning, especially at night. There's stable light so that there's security. So these are some of the things that we often ask when we are planning of the shift towards e-mobility, and in terms of the appropriate energy mix for island ecosystems.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Alfredo. This is why I think this discussion round is so interesting, because we're we're researchers and we sit behind our modeling tools and we try to use our assumptions. First, my question would be, however, don't you think that diesel or fossil fuel-based energy systems are also not very reliable? Because so I look at mostly Mauritius, but then with the SIDS, and what we see is that you don't always have 100% power supply. But of course, with solar or renewables, it's a very intermittent, and we still haven't probably reached the same stability level as we have there. But yeah, I do think that in the long run, with more technologies, that with solar, just my personal feelings, because I'm a huge solar fan, that we will reach this this level of stability. But like you said, when you said the cost of power versus the cost of health and the cost of education, then and this is where I think policy making and subsidies really come into play, because it is also the role, in my opinion, of the government to ensure that the citizens have the lower cost of power for the greater environmental benefits right now. And I think this is going to be a major issue also in the upcoming climate talks, because I don't believe that it is the citizens who need to take on the cost burden of transitioning. And this is where we really need to look for more flexible payment or funding mechanisms, I think. Yeah.
If I might just add a quick note on the reliability, I think obviously the intermittency of renewable energy sources is a problem. And I think this can be mitigated to some point by adding more consistent generation technologies such as biomass, possibly hydro if that's an option on the specific island. I think another thing that can greatly enhance the reliability of an energy system based on renewables is the widespread use of electric vehicles, because they represent very significant battery capacity. And in fact, I looked into this when we were doing this project. In 2011, when there was the earthquake and the tsunami in Japan, Nissan sent down a fleet of electric vehicles to power emergency clinics and other essential services with their batteries. And so if you have electric vehicles that are charging possibly during the day, that are plugged in at night, they can also provide backup power. So I think there's lots of really interesting possibilities here.
Hello, Maria.
Hello.
Hello.
We can hear you.
You can hear us? You can hear me, Maria?
Yes.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay. In addition to the answer to the question of our good mate Alfred from Siargao, no? For the stability of the grid, no? Without these modern technologies like especially the storage, the batteries, no? That will answer the variability of the RE, and the cost again, also the cost of the lithium-ion batteries, especially getting cheaper, and that can support also can address also the clamor of the people of how to make the electricity in the off-grid areas become cheaper. So a combination of energy management system, the RE and store energy storage like lithium like batteries. This can address the issue on the variability and the ability of the RE. So I think that would help answer the question.
Thank you very much. I see another question in the chat where I don't know who is behind the Slowcat partnership name, but they ask, why are not more utility companies pushing towards electrification of transport? Because there are large revenue streams available when doing so. So could utility companies play a more active role? Does anyone want to take this?
I could try. So in the case of Mauritius, the utility is government owned, I'm sure it's the case for many other islands or countries, and it's very it's very old and very bureaucratic. And this is a huge discussion we're seeing in Mauritius at the moment, where now we have two electric buses and a few electric vehicles, especially with electric buses, as that is also then state-owned. We don't know who will be taking on the responsibility of pushing this electrification, or whether it's going to be owned by a private company, and then there has to be a way of communication between the utility and the company. I think in general, I think at the moment utility companies are very subsidized in the case of Mauritius at the moment, and sees no benefits. It's not true, but for them in the short term, they see no benefit, and I think that is an issue at the moment. And what we've also seen in the case of Barbados, with the third highest EV share in the world, is that it's been mostly pushed by the private sector without a lot of support from the utility companies. And I can't answer why more utility companies are not pushing, but I think I hope it changes. But at the moment, I think they're just stuck in this old fossil fuel world. To be a bit more radical, yeah.
Thank you very much. Maybe, yes, some of our other speakers can enlighten us on how this works in practice in the Philippines.
If I may, I just want to say I fully agree that there should be a push towards the electrification of transport, but it should be not on the utility side alone, but the role of local government is very critical, because shifting towards electric vehicles is a behavioral change and a matter of local policy as well. How do you now, for example, in our case, we wanted to do that before, but the type of vehicles that arrived in our community, which is hilly, could not carry the regular number of passengers or cargo that we use with fuel run vehicles, engines. So that kind of behavior has to be first addressed. If the electric run vehicles has already that enough power to go through hilly terrains on a regular basis, and there's enough local experts that can repair specific engine types, then the shift towards that may be faster. That's why I think it has to be both local government and utility collaboration.
Okay. Maria, can I add?
Yes, of course, and we can hear you.
Okay. With regards to the question on I think this part of the promotion of the electrification of transportation. It's not only directed towards the electric utility because uh, for us to develop a more to introduce in the community the electrification of vehicles. I think there's a need for the government, no, to have to develop a landscape that will encourage the user, the regulators, and the power energy suppliers about electrification of vehicles, because electric utility cannot do alone the promotion of electrification of vehicles. It should be supported by policies like here in the Philippines. Actually, Congress now are developing rules, no, or laws, no, regarding to the adoption of the electrification of vehicles. So I think it should be all players should be included in the promotion of electrification of vehicles. Like yes, I agree with the Vice Mayor that the old technologies for the electric vehicles are not so uh, powerful that can compete with the regular motorcycles. Let's say, for example, tricycles that can carry a big loads, can carry a 15 person per vehicle. Uh, so that should be that's was this technology. This issue was already addressed by the new technologies. There are now more powerful electric vehicles that can that are comparable already with the gasoline fed or fueled motorcycles. And also for the electric utility, no, it should be supported by the government because when you roll out a large number of electric vehicles in the street, so you need an infrastructure that will support the charging. So the current system of the electric utilities, especially in the rural areas, were designed, no, just to supply electricity for households with capacity with a load of around let's say less than one kilowatt, 500 watts, something like that. But when you charge a vehicle, let's say for example a motorcycle, you need at least 25 kilowatt of demand, no, for you to charge the batteries. So that will change. That will change the infrastructure. There's a need to change the infrastructure of the utilities. So there should be a holistic approach to this, including coming from the from the government down to the developer of technologies and to the electric utilities and to the consumers. So it should be a holistic approach, not just like put the burden to the utility in developing or in promoting this what we call electrification of the transport. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that contribution. Are there any further questions?
I think, Maria, I will going to answer one question in the chat box directed to me. I think this is coming up. Question. Okay. So our dispenser, our barging dispenser, if we have a dispenser, we have full battery in those battery charge stations. I think that answers the question of Tanya.
Thank you. Any further questions? I might have a quick one. We are nearly out of time, but this is just very interesting. I was wondering, most of this, the examples we've heard were related to still to still centralize power, so utility scale renewables. And what do you think the role is of decentralized renewables? So either smaller mini grids or home-based renewable energy generation in this transition? And have you seen examples of it already?
Maria, can I answer that question in our case based on our
Please do.
experience? Yeah. In the small islands, no, we are developing a distributed solar because we found out that that is more efficient than a big centralized one. Because we found out that if you have many of those distributed solar, the efficiency or the availability is uh, more pronounced than the one that is centralized, because in a centralized setting, the current regulating plant here in our place is diesel power plant. So when a 2 megawatt size solar power plant installed in one place, when the clouds goes over the power plant, it will drastically reduce the capacity. So the diesel power plant will have to catch up, no, or to regulate the system, and it will not last long for this machine, no, to be operated. So it more often encounter technical problem and issue. So we opted to have this power plant distributed and installed in these basketball courts, no, in the barangays, no, which can accommodate as much as 100 kilowatt per rooftop. So it is better that for the small island to have this solar power plant or other renewable power plant like wind uh, to be distributed, because uh, different places have different characteristics, no, in terms of harvesting renewable energies. So that's our experience. We prepared to provide distributed renewable energies like solar power plant.
Great, thank you very much.
Maria, may I just add also in terms of solar power?
Of course, please go ahead.
But again, let me start with the premise that a lot of our islands, especially these beautiful islands we have, are anchored on tourism as now one of their main industries, and then the bigger industries. So when you talk of tourism, you talk of land value. And if you take over a particular piece of land in a small island setting that is into tourism, the cost of your solar acquisition for the land itself is already very high. That's why I agree with the strategy that was proposed by Sir Rene to do distributed solar. In our case, our land value now keeps on appreciating even during the pandemic. And it's very ridiculous to start a solar farm when the cost is just really, really high. So there are these considerations from the perspective of governing that we have to consider in terms of identifying again the type of renewable that may be applicable for everyone.
Great, that's really interesting. I hadn't even thought of that. I don't know if there are any more questions. I don't see any additional ones in the chat. So if not, thank you very much to all of our speakers for attending. I know we're all busy people, so we really appreciate you taking the time to be here and not only give very interesting presentations, but join the discussion afterwards as well. I think it's been very interesting. If anyone would like to learn more about the work of the main organizers, then please have a look at our websites or our Twitter feeds for the latest updates. And I think that's a wrap. Have a very nice evening, day, or good night if you are in my time zone, and stay in touch.
Thank you very
you.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.